The sun was sharp that morning, heating the metal of every soldier's rifle. The war zone was tense. A bridge ahead was completely locked down. No one could cross. The enemy sniper was hiding somewhere far on the other side. No one had seen him, but they all felt his presence. Every time someone moved, a bullet would scream past. And if they weren't careful, someone would fall and never rise again. 12 trained marksmen had already tried. Each one of them had taken position, aimed carefully, and missed. The enemy was too far, too smart, too fast. The general stood with folded arms, lips pressed tight. He didn't like wasting time or men. He looked around at the crowd of soldiers and shouted, "Get me a real sharpshooter." Whispers began to rise. Who was left? Everyone good had already tried. One soldier, a young boy with a nervous look, hesitated. Then, in a low voice, he said, "There's one more." "But she's not really, No," the general turned sharply. "Who?" The boy pointed toward the far end of the tent. There she was, sitting on the ground. Quietly cleaning her rifle, she didn't look up, didn't react to the noise around her. Her movements were slow, careful, like she was listening to music only she could hear. No medals on her chest, no high rank, just a pair of calm eyes and steady hands. Her name was Layla Reeve. Some soldiers had heard about her, but most didn't know anything. A few called her the ghost shooter. Some joked she was just lucky once. Others said she never spoke because she had nothing worth saying. But none of them could deny one thing. She was different. She didn't walk with pride, she didn't seek approval, she was just there. Always watching, always waiting, always silent. The general walked over to her, boots thudding heavily on the dry ground. He stopped in front of her and said simply, "You think you can make the shot?" Layla looked up, met his eyes for a second, then nodded once, no words, just one nod. He stared at her for a moment longer, then said, "Get up then. Show me." She stood, dusted off her pants, picked up her long-range rifle. It wasn't standard army issue. Her weapon was customized, longer barrel, handmade grip, special scope. This wasn't just a rifle. It was part of her. The soldiers watched with mixed expressions, some curious, some amused, some annoyed. "She's gonna miss like the rest," one muttered. "She won't even see the target," another laughed. But Layla didn't react. She walked slowly to the sniper tower, climbed it step by step. At the top, she lay flat on her stomach. One soldier handed her the information. Wind speed, distance, enemy's last known position. 206 and 70 meters, a shot so far even legends would hesitate. Most rifles couldn't even reach that range with full power. She adjusted her scope, checked the wind, moved the dial by a few clicks. Her fingers moved like they were dancing. Smooth, practiced, silent. Down below, the general and his men watched through binoculars. Sweat rolled down the young soldier's face. The enemy sniper was still out there. If Layla missed, someone else might die. Seconds passed, she didn't fire. She didn't even blink. She was waiting for something. Then finally, she pulled in a deep breath, held it, and slowly squeezed the trigger. The gun fired. No one spoke. The sound echoed across the valley like a whisper turning into thunder. 3 seconds later, ting! A sharp metallic sound bounced back. Someone shouted, "Contact!" The binoculars shook in the general's hands. The enemy sniper was down, clean hit, through the crate. Into the chest, a perfect shot. The silence that followed was louder than the bullet. No one cheered, no one clapped, they just stared. She had done what 12 men couldn't. With one bullet, one breath, and no noise. Layla stood up, dusted her pants again, and walked back down the tower. She didn't smile, didn't brag. She just placed her rifle back in its case and sat down again, as if nothing happened, as if she had just finished her morning coffee. The murmurs returned, but this time they were different. "She's not normal. That was inhuman. Who is she, really?" But Layla didn't answer. She never did, she just waited. Because she knew this was only the beginning. After the shot, everything changed. But Layla didn't. She returned to her corner, quietly cleaning the same rifle she had just made history with. People stared, but she didn't look up. The general stood still for a long time, eyes locked on her. He had seen many snipers, many battles, but never a shot like that. He wanted to speak, but there were no words that matched the moment. Later, around the campfire, soldiers spoke in low voices. Who is she really? Where did she train? Why isn't she in the special units? But no one had answers. Her name didn't appear on posters. No picture in training halls. No speeches, no awards, no famous articles, just a name. Layla Reeve. A name that echoed in the air but never in records. She didn't walk with bodyguards or carry the weight of medals. She wore plain green fatigues, dusty boots, and eyes that had seen too much. No one knew what to make of her. Was she hiding something? Was she dangerous? Or just different? The general called her into his tent the next morning. She stepped inside and saluted, simple and quiet. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" he asked, finally breaking the silence. She paused for a moment, then said in a soft voice, "Mountains, sir." He frowned. "Which mountains?" "Alaska," she replied. Her voice was calm. Almost too calm for someone who had just made a world record shot. He nodded slowly, then leaned back in his chair. "I've seen men train for years and still miss at 2,000 meters. You hit 2,670 like you were swatting a fly." She didn't smile. Just replied, "I only shoot when I'm sure." That line stayed with him. "I only shoot when I'm sure," in the mess hall. The younger soldiers watched her like she was from another planet. Some of them felt inspired, others threatened. One cocky soldier approached her table, tried to test her. "What scope were you using?" he asked. She looked up and said, "The one that sees." He laughed nervously. "You're mysterious, huh?" She didn't respond. The silence was louder than any answer. Eventually, he walked away, confused and embarrassed. Layla wasn't trying to be cold, she just lived in a world inside her head. A world where every sound mattered, every vibration had meaning. Words were often noise to her and unnecessary. Distracting, she had learned that long ago. Her father left when she was 3. Her mother died when she was 8. She grew up in her grandfather's wooden cabin deep in the Alaskan wilderness. No neighbors, no friends, no electricity. Just the cold, the trees. And her grandfather's stories, he was blind. A war veteran who had seen too much and then saw nothing, but he taught her how to see without eyes. He taught her how to listen, not just with ears, but with her skin, her breath, her bones. "Stillness is louder than noise," he told her once. She never forgot that by age 12, she could tell the kind of bird flying overhead just by the sound of its wings. By 15, she could shoot a falling pine cone from 300 meters. By 17, she was already building her own scopes from spare parts. She had no phone, no internet, but her vision was sharper than any screen one day. A hunting video recorded by a tourist accidentally caught her making a 1,100-meter shot. The clip went viral, the army came knocking. She didn't want fame, but she did want focus. So she joined, not for medals or stories, but for silence. Only in war could she truly disappear into the background and listen. Only in war could her calm become a weapon. But even in the army, she stayed hidden. She never applied for elite teams. Never showed off if no one asked her to shoot. She didn't. She trained quietly, observed, and waited until now. Now the general knew her name. Now the soldiers were watching. Now the radio units were whispering across bases. "We heard about a woman. 2,670 meters, really?" But she didn't care about what people were saying. That evening, while others played cards or joked around, Layla walked to the edge of the camp. She lay flat on the dirt and stared at the stars. Not dreaming, not planning, just watching, still quiet, sure. Because she knew the real test was not the shot already taken. It was the next one, and it was coming. Before the rifle, before the war, before the world knew her name, Layla Reeve lived in the shadows. Not the shadows of danger, but the quiet, cold shadows of the Alaskan wilderness. There were no streetlights there. No neighbors, no school bells, just snow, silence, and one small wooden cabin lost between pine trees and mountains. She was 8 when the last light in her life went out. Her mother, strong, warm, full of life, died in her sleep one winter night. No warning, no goodbye, just breath that never came back. Layla waited beside her bed until morning. Too shocked to cry, the snow outside kept falling, as if the world didn't care what she'd lost. Her father was long gone. He had left years earlier, chasing city lights and forgetting promises. So the only person left was her grandfather, Samuel Reeve, a blind man with a heavy beard, rough hands, and a voice full of thunder. He had fought in a forgotten war, lost his sight in a blast, and moved into the woods to find peace. He didn't expect to raise a child in that silence, but he did, and he did it in his own strange, powerful way. He never spoke to Layla like a baby. He treated her like a partner, taught her how to chop wood, fish through the ice, and track elk by footprints alone. But more than that, and he taught her how to see without seeing. "How do you think I survive here, blind and alone?" he'd ask. She would shrug, he'd tap her forehead and say, "By listening," and so she learned. She learned to walk barefoot on snow and feel the ice cracking deep underground. She learned to hear the way wind curved around trees. She learned to sense when a fox was near just by the shift in air pressure. She learned stillness, she learned patience. Every morning before sunrise, he'd sit on the porch and say, "Tell me what the world is doing." She would close her eyes and describe what she heard. "Two crows flying east," she'd say. "A branch broke near the stream. Probably a rabbit." "The snow sounds wet today," he'd nod, smile and say, "Good, better than yesterday." One day, he gave her an old rifle, rusty, heavy, wooden. "This belonged to my father," he said. "It's yours now." She looked at it like it was magic. "But I don't want to hurt anything," she said. He nodded. "Then don't shoot to hurt. Shoot to protect." She didn't fire it for weeks, but she carried it everywhere. And when a bear came too close to their cabin one spring evening, she didn't hesitate, one shot into the air and loud and sure, and when the bear ran. Her grandfather laughed. "You didn't shoot the bear, but you told it who's boss." From that day on, the rifle became part of her. She cleaned it like others brushed their hair. She practiced shooting pine cones, icicles, metal cans, not for fun but for skill, always with focus, always with silence. One winter when she was 15, a group of tourists got lost in the forest. She found them by tracking their broken branches, scattered footprints, and the scent of gasoline. When one of them panicked and pointed a camera at her, she didn't know what to do. She told them where to go, gave them a compass, and disappeared. But that camera caught something else, her shooting a target from almost a mile away. She had done it to show them direction, hitting a tree near a frozen trail. They uploaded the video later with the title, "Mysterious Mountain Girl Shoots Like a Ghost." The video reached the city, then the army. They sent men to look for her. When they found her cabin, they expected an old man. Instead, they found a teenage girl with a rifle slung across her back, and eyes that saw through walls. At first, she said no. She didn't want noise, uniforms, commands. But her grandfather sat her down and said, "Use your gift, Layla, not for war, but for those who can't see what you do." He died 2 winters later, in the same bed her mother had once slept in. Layla didn't cry. She sat beside him all night, just like before, and when morning came, she packed the rifle, the compass, and his old military tag. Then she walked down the mountain and signed the enlistment papers. Not to fight, not to kill, but to protect. With patience, with silence, with certainty, because even in the loudest battlefield, Layla Reeve was still the girl from the shadows, the one who listened better than anyone could see. The desert sun was like fire that day. The air shimmered above the sand, and every sound carried far. Layla Reeve sat alone on a small dune, her rifle resting across her knees. Her team was pinned down 2 kilometers away, trapped between 2 ridges. They had been ambushed during a convoy escort. No one saw it coming. No one except her. She had noticed the shift in the air long before it happened. The silence between the wind gusts felt wrong. The birds that usually circled the sky were gone. Something was off when the explosion hit. She was already on her belly, aiming down her scope. 3 vehicles burned instantly, black smoke rising into the white sun. She could hear the screams through her earpiece. "Sniper! We're pinned down! We can't see him!" Layla scanned the ridge. Her heartbeat was slow and too slow for war. Every sound became a signal, every vibration a clue. And then she saw it, a small glint of sunlight bouncing off metal. The enemy sniper's scope, hidden behind a pile of rocks. He was waiting for the wounded to move. Her finger hovered on the trigger, but she hesitated. It wasn't fear, it was awareness. The first real kill is something no one forgets. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her head. "Shoot to protect, not to hurt," she whispered to herself. "Then protect," and pulled the trigger. The sound cracked across the valley. 1 shot, 1 echo, 1 second of silence. Then the threat was gone. Her bullet had found its mark. The sniper fell backward, his weapon sliding down the rocks. The radio exploded with voices, "Target down! Target down!" Her team was safe, but Layla didn't celebrate. She just sat there, staring at the ridge. The sand under her elbows felt colder now, her chest heavy, her throat dry. She had done her job, saved lives, but inside, something felt lost. That night the base was alive with noise, music, laughter, relief. But Layla stayed outside, sitting under a flickering floodlight, cleaning her rifle. A young soldier named Harris approached. "You saved us today," he said softly. She didn't look up. He waited, then asked, "How does it feel?" "You know, the first one?" Layla paused, then said quietly, "Like breathing in too deep and forgetting how to exhale." He didn't understand. Few ever did. The next morning, she walked to the field hospital. There were 5 men in recovery, the ones her shot had saved. One of them reached out, grabbed her wrist, and said, "You're the reason I get to call my wife tonight." She forced a small smile, but as she walked out, she could still feel his hand shaking in hers. That trembling reminded her. Behind every shot was a heartbeat, and she had stopped one. Days turned into weeks. Her name began to spread quietly among soldiers. Not through reports, not through medals, but through whispers. "If Reeve is on Overwatch, you'll make it home," they'd say. She didn't like attention, but she accepted missions others refused. The harder the distance, the stronger her focus. The more impossible the angle, the calmer her breathing. Her reputation grew. So did the questions. Some officers doubted her. Some envied her. Others tried to test her. Once, during a desert drill, an instructor challenged her to a moving target at 1,800 meters. "Too far," he said with a smirk. "Even for you." Layla looked through the scope. Exhaled once, the bullet landed dead center. She didn't say a word, just turned, walked away, and left the men standing in silence. But deep inside she wasn't proud. Every time she cleaned her rifle, she saw the reflection of the man she had shot. Not his face, but the memory of his stillness. War wasn't a game to her, it was a duty. One she carried quietly. Then came a letter from her commanding officer. It said, "Your mission saved an entire convoy. The general wants to meet you." But she didn't go. Instead, she wrote one sentence back. "I did what I had to." That's enough. From that day on, soldiers started calling her the Shadow, because she never sought the spotlight. She moved when no one watched, struck when no one expected, and disappeared before anyone could thank her years later. When asked in an interview about her first confirmed kill, she simply said, "I didn't kill a man that day. I killed a decision that could have killed others." That was the only time she spoke of it. And after that, never again. After the shot that saved the convoy, Layla Reeve became a ghost. Not in death, but in the way she moved, the way she vanished. Her name began to appear on internal reports. Unmatched long-range accuracy, mission success, Reeve confirmed kill. Requesting her on Overwatch, but when medals were handed out, Layla was never there when photos were taken. She had already left the base, she had no interest in applause. No love for shiny medals, she only wanted space, silence, and a clean rifle. One day, a senior officer from headquarters came to see her. He arrived in a black car, wearing polished boots and carrying a folder. Inside that folder were documents, a promotion offer, a unit patch, a Medal of Honor. He stood in front of her bunk and said, "You're being offered a new position. Lead sniper for the Special Recon Unit. Higher pay, better status, more visibility." Layla looked at the folder, then looked at him and said, "No." The officer blinked. Confused, "You're turning it down?" She nodded. He asked, "Why?" She simply replied, "I'm not built for stages." The next morning, she was gone. No transfer request, no goodbye. Her barracks locker was empty except for a small note taped to the door. It said, "You only need 1 bullet. Use it wisely." She returned to Alaska, to the woods that had raised her. The cabin still stood under the trees. Though older now, dust covered the porch, but inside, it still smelled like cedar and quiet. She unpacked only 3 things: her rifle, her grandfather's dog tags, and a faded photograph of her mother. Layla didn't want to be remembered. She wanted to disappear. For a while she did. The military called her phone for weeks. No answer. Emails were ignored. Eventually they stopped trying. The war moved on, new soldiers came, and her legend began to fade. But not for everyone, some remembered, the ones she had saved. The ones who had seen her shoot, and they told stories. Stories of a silent woman who hit targets no one else could. Of a sniper who vanished like smoke 2 years past. Layla worked in a mechanic shop in a small town near the edge of the forest. She fixed old trucks, repaired hunting rifles, and never spoke unless needed. Locals respected her silence. Some were curious, but no one dared ask too much. She wore no army gear, no pins, no hats, but every morning, she walked into the woods before sunrise with her rifle. Not to hunt, just to breathe, to listen. She practiced in silence. Always alone, it was her way of staying sharp, even if she swore never to fire at a human again. But the world wasn't finished with her yet. One snowy evening, just as the wind began to howl and the trees groaned under ice, a black SUV stopped outside her shop. A man stepped out wearing plain clothes but military boots. He walked inside and said nothing, just handed her a folder. Much like the one from years ago, she didn't open it. She simply asked, "Why now?" He replied, 12 missed. 1 shot left. The general asked for you, she didn't answer. She just stared at the snow falling outside the window. The sound of winter was louder than the war. But deep inside she felt the call, not of duty, not of orders but of purpose, he added quietly. "The shot's impossible," she replied. "That's the only kind worth taking." That night she packed again. No speech, no goodbye. She left a note on her shop counter. Back later, maybe. The next morning, she boarded a military transport plane with no name tag. No rank, just her rifle case and her quiet eyes. When she landed, the soldiers didn't recognize her. No one believed the silent woman with a tool bag and old boots was the same ghost from the stories. But the general did when he saw her step off the plane. He didn't salute, he just said, "Took you long enough," she replied. "Had to think about it," and just like that, the legend returned, not with flags or fireworks, but with silence, steel, and the weight of one perfect shot waiting in the wind. The valley was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that comes just before something unforgettable happens. Layla Reeves stood on a rooftop platform built from sandbags and old metal sheets. The air was dry and sharp. She scanned the distance with her eyes before even lifting her rifle. The enemy sniper had locked down an entire forward base from over 2 kilometers away. Every attempt to remove him had failed. 12 of the Army's best had tried. 12 had missed. Now all eyes were on her. But Layla wasn't looking back. She wasn't thinking about pressure or fear or reputation. She was thinking about math, wind, heat, and the way the earth curved beneath a bullet. Her rifle, the one she built herself, was already laid out in perfect alignment. A custom 408 Chaytak with a modified barrel and carbon fiber stock. She checked the scope, then checked it again. She moved like water, slow, smooth, sure. A young spotter crouched beside her, barely 20, his hands trembling. "This is the last shot we've got before evac," he whispered. She didn't respond, not because she didn't care, but because her brain was already moving through angles and numbers. Wind 9.7 mep, shifting southeast. Distance 2,670 meters, almost 3 kilometers. Humidity, low, heat high, which meant bullet rise. She adjusted the scope in tiny clicks, not guesses, decisions. She could feel the rhythm of the air, like a second heartbeat beside her own. Then, there it was. A glint of movement behind a crumbled stone wall on the far hill. It was the enemy sniper. He moved like a shadow, barely visible, but visible enough. She exhaled once, then again. Her body lowered slightly as her breathing slowed. She wasn't just lying down, she became the ground. The spotter tried to speak again, but froze as her finger rested on the trigger. There was no countdown. No signal, only stillness, then silence broke, boom. Her rifle roared like thunder across the valley. The sound reached the spotter first, but the bullet was already on its journey, flying at almost 3,000 feet per second. In those 3 seconds of flight, Layla didn't blink. She watched, waited, trusted. The bullet cut through air, through heat, through wind. And then, ting, a distant metallic ring echoed back. The sound of bullets striking steel and bone. The spotter gasped. The enemy sniper slumped behind the wall. Dead, 1 shot, 1 breath, 1 life. Layla didn't celebrate. She just closed her eyes for a moment. Not in pride, but in silence. Voices on the radio exploded. "Target eliminated! Base is clear." "Who took the shot?" The general's voice cut through it all, a calm question in a storm of noise. Was it her? Layla stood up, brushed the dust from her uniform, and began packing her rifle. The spotter stared at her in awe. I've never seen..." She interrupted softly. "You saw it, that's enough." Back at base, soldiers clapped as she walked past. Some saluted, others just stared. But Layla didn't stop. She entered a quiet tent, drank a bottle of water, and cleaned her weapon. The record was broken. The enemy was down. The mission was complete. But Layla Reeve didn't care about records. She cared that no more bodies would fall on that bridge. She cared that soldiers would now go home instead of into graves. Later, When asked by a reporter how she made the shot, she answered simply, "I didn't shoot the man. I shot the moment." That night, she walked to the edge of camp and looked out over the dark hills. She didn't feel powerful, she didn't feel famous, she just felt quiet. She remembered her grandfather's words, "If you can take the shot and still sleep at night, then you shot for the right reason." She could sleep because she knew without pride, without noise, she had just made the shot of a lifetime. It took only a few hours for the story to leave the desert. By morning, the numbers were everywhere, 2,670 meters. Longest confirmed sniper shot by a woman, the headline screamed. Unknown marksman saves dozens. News channels played shaky video from helmet cams, trying to zoom in on a shadowed figure lying on a rooftop. They didn't know her name yet, but the world had already started calling her something new. The Silent Reaper. Back at base, soldiers crowded around laptops and radios. Some laughed, others cheered. "Did you see that shot? She's not human." But Layla Reeve wasn't there, she was already gone. She had packed up the moment her rifle was clean. She didn't wait for a ceremony, didn't give an interview, didn't even stay for dinner. She boarded a transport helicopter with no tags, no gear except her rifle, and disappeared again. But this time, the world wasn't willing to let her go. Satellite footage was studied, flight records reviewed, old mission logs pulled from dusty computers. It didn't take long. One name kept popping up in quiet corners of classified files. Reeve. The military tried to control the story, but it was too late. A reporter found her file. A blurry ID photo from years ago, eyes sharp even then. They published it with the headline, "Meet the woman who redefined distance." The world exploded. Social media went wild. Talk shows debated her story. Some called her a hero. Some questioned if the shot was real. But no one could ignore her anymore. At the Pentagon, a ceremony was planned. Medals polished, a stage prepared, cameras tested. They invited generals, senators, even global guests, all for one woman, but she didn't show up. The military sent an officer to deliver the award to her in person. He traveled to the last known address on file, a small shop near a frozen forest town. Inside, he found a mechanic wiping grease off her hands. She looked up, surprised but not shocked. He opened a velvet box, revealing the medal. She stared at it for a long time, then closed the box gently and handed it back. "I already have what I came for," she said. "What's that?" He asked. "Silence," she replied. A local news team came a week later. They offered money. A full documentary deal she declined. They begged for just one photo. She pointed at the closed sign on her shop window and said, "That's the only thing I'm willing to frame." But while she hid, others searched. A young woman named Ella Morgan, a fresh recruit and aspiring sniper, followed every article, every post. She had grown up hearing only male names in sniper school. Now finally she saw someone who looked like her. Someone quiet, strong, alone, just like she felt. Ella took a risk. Wrote a letter. "You don't know me, but you've already changed everything.
Can you teach me?"
She mailed it to the last known address. Unsure if it would reach, but a month later, an envelope arrived at her barracks. Inside was a single line, handwritten, "If you can sit still for 4 hours without checking your watch, come find me." That winter, Ella did. She arrived at the cabin in Alaska with frost on her eyelashes and fear in her chest. But when Layla opened the door, she only said one thing: "Leave your phone in the mailbox. Time doesn't live here." Layla didn't train her like a soldier. She trained her like the woods had trained her. They sat for hours without speaking, watched birds fly against wind currents, listened to trees creak under snow. Only after a week did she hand Ella a scope. "Don't aim yet," she said. "Just learn how to see." Word spread. Quietly, Layla had become a teacher, but not for money, not for headlines. Only for those who came with patience in their hearts and respect in their steps. In a world that screamed louder every day, she chose whispers. She never returned to the army, never sat on TV, but she was remembered by soldiers who lived because of her, by students who learned what silence could do, and by every young woman who one day held a rifle and knew someone like them had already carved the path. Not with noise, but with precision, with patience, with purpose. With one perfect shot. Years passed, wars ended, others began, but the world never saw Layla Reeve on a stage. She never wore a uniform again, never returned to any battlefield. Yet her story kept traveling and whispered, shared, remembered, Not through books, not through awards, but through people, through the lives she had touched, some directly, some from far away in one corner of the world. A soldier named Davis carried a bullet on a chain around his neck, not because he fired it, but because he didn't die from one. The day Layla took the shot that saved his convoy, he'd been moments from bleeding out. He never met her face to face, but every night, he prayed for the ghost who saw farther than fear. In a small academy tucked in the mountains, young sharpshooters trained under a new code. They called it the Reeve method. No shouting, no ego, just patience, breath, stillness, and purpose. The main rule: never pull the trigger unless you know why. That line was painted on the classroom wall. No one knew where it came from, but the instructor, a woman named Ella, smiled quietly whenever recruits asked. Some students tried to Google Layla's name. They found grainy photos, a few blurry clips, and thousands of online debates. Was the 2,670-meter shot real? Is the Silent Reaper a myth? But none of those files gave the answer, because the truth of Layla Reeve was never written down. It was felt in villages rebuilt because her shot cleared a path, in families that stayed whole because someone made it home, in every young girl who believed strength didn't need noise, and in every sniper who learned that the best shooters aren't the ones who fire fastest, but the ones who wait the longest. Back in Alaska, the cabin stood unchanged. Wooden porch, smoke from the chimney, snow on the roof. Layla walked the same trail every morning, rifle over her back, not to hunt, not to prepare for war, but to listen, to stay ready. One evening, Ella visited again, now older, sharper. She sat with Layla by the fire, the sky burning gold above the trees. Ella said, "They want to name a training center after you." Layla didn't answer right away. She stirred the fire with a stick, then said, "Let them name it after the ones who didn't make it back." Ella nodded. Not surprised, she had learned by now. Silence was Layla's favorite language. Later that night, Layla pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was her grandfather's dog tag, the first shell she ever fired, and a folded note. She handed it to Ella and said, "If I ever stop waking up with the wind, this belongs to the right one." Ella took it without question, because she knew it wasn't a gift, it was trust. Layla never grew old in the usual way. She didn't retire, didn't fade. She simply slowed down, like rivers do when they reach still water. And one winter morning, when the snow fell especially soft, she didn't come out of the cabin. No one found her with medals on her chest. No news team arrived, only Ella stood there, holding back tears as she placed her mentor's rifle on the wall. Beside it, she carved a simple message. She never missed what mattered. And that's how the world truly remembered her. Not as a warrior, not as a legend, but as a woman who proved something powerful. That silence can be stronger than noise. That patience can be deadlier than speed. And that the greatest heroes don't chase glory. They carry it quietly. In every corner of the world where conflict still burns, snipers still speak her name. Some say she watches from the wind. Others say her spirit guides the bullet when the target seems impossible. But all of them agree. She taught them that shooting is not about hitting. It's about knowing when not to. And that's the legacy Layla Reeve left behind. A name carved not in stone but in silence.